Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. There are a lot of items in Deadlock, but not all of them are made equal. Some items are extremely popular, like Swift Striker, Titanic Magazine, Superior Cooldown, items like that, while other items are much less popular. And so today, I want to take a look at some of the least popular items in Deadlock, and try and brainstorm ideas for how they could be improved. There's this very neat website called statlocker.gg, which allows you to track all kinds of different statistics about Deadlock, and that includes items and their popularity and their win rate, and we can actually sort by the buy rate to see that, oh hey, wow, Superior Cooldown is the most popular item in the game. Can sort by win rate and see that Frenzy has the highest win rate in the game, and we can also sort in reverse and see the least popular items and the least effective items in the game. And so I want to look through most of these, as well as go over a few anecdotal items that I just think could use some improvements, and talk about how I would change them. That being said, I am not an Eternus player. I am a pretty middle-of-the-road Archon 6 Oracle 1 level player, so these are going to be probably not the perfect ways to balance these items, and that's where I want you to tell me in the comments how you would balance these items and where I might be going wrong, because I also want to try and take this as an opportunity to learn a little bit more about Deadlock too when it comes to these items, and specifically why they're bad and why people never use them and what could be done to make them more balanced. So with that being said, let's get started by talking about Rusted Barrel. Oh boy. This item is simultaneously one of the lowest buy rate and lowest win rate items, and its cousin Disarming actually has the the dishonor of being the lowest win rate item in the entire game, with a 38.1% win rate across all ranks, which is ludicrously low. You are much more likely to lose your game than you are to win it if you buy Disarming Hex. So what's up with these two items? Well, for Rusted Barrel, it's pretty easy to see why it's bad, because there's another item that just does its job a million times better. So the stats of Rusted Barrel are plus 60 bonus health, plus half a meter per second of sprint speed, and it has an active ability where every 25 seconds you're able to target one enemy to reduce their fire rate by 35% for 5 seconds. But if we just spend 800 more souls, we can buy Suppressor, which gives us 6 spirit power, already boosting our damage. We get 75 bonus health, which is more bonus health than Rusted Barrel, and whenever we deal spirit damage to enemies, we also reduce their fire rate by 35% for 4 seconds. So, you can see why this is a million times better, because a lot of characters have super consistent spirit damage outputs, and this allows them to constantly refresh this fire rate slow on one enemy in particular, or spread it out to multiple enemies, all without having a 25-second cooldown like Rusted Barrel, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And then when we upgrade to Disarming Hex, we get 100 bonus health, which is more than Suppressor, although this is twice as cheap, and going from a 800 item to a 1600 item is much less of a jump than a 1600 item to a 3200 item. So, yeah, it's not proportionally that much more bonus health compared to Suppressor when you frame it like that, and the active item also still has a 25-second cooldown. It disarms the enemy target for 4 seconds, and it does reduce their bullet resist, so it is a much more powerful effect. So what would I do to improve Rusted Barrel and Disarming Hex? Well, for Disarming Hex, I think we can do something kind of interesting, and that is to make it very similar to Silence Wave and how it activates. Silence Wave is kind of like just the bigger brother of Disarming Hex, because it has a similar effect but for abilities. It silences enemies, it lowers their spirit resist, and it lowers their spirit power, which is kind of crazy. And Silence Wave also activates in a different way. You see, if I throw out the Disarming Hex, it kind of just hits one enemy like that. However, if we use the Silence Wave, well, as it says in the name, it's a wave, so this travels out and it can potentially affect multiple enemies, which is, you know, kind of a big deal because we can potentially double, triple, or even quadruple the effect of the Silence Wave, depending on how many people we hit, whereas the Disarming Hex is only limited to one person. So, I think we could rename this item to Disarming Wave, and have it shoot out a wave that can potentially disarm multiple people and lower their bullet resist. Sounds like a good idea to me. I don't see why that would go wrong. It would basically turn it into Mo and Krill's Silence, except you have to buy it. It operates slightly differently, but it would be much, much more impactful than it currently is, because at this time you're currently limited to just disarming one gun hero, and I don't know, I just don't think that's very good. Now, Rusted Barrel is a bit trickier, because it's directly competing with a vastly superior item in the form of Suppressor. However, in my opinion, it is also kind of similar to Spirit Sap. Spirit Sap upgrades into Silence Wave, and it's the precursor. It lowers their spirit resist, and it lowers their spirit power, and lowering someone's spirit power effectively lowers their spirit damage output in a similar way to reducing their fire rate. So perhaps what you could do to Rusted Barrel then is make it similar to Spirit Sap and also lower their bullet resistance. Kind of like how Disarming Hex lowers their bullet resistance, you can maybe make Rusted Barrel lower their bullet resistance by 7%, you know, which would be half of Disarming Hex pretty much, or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've got for this item. Next, let's talk about Metal Skin. Now this was an item that surprised me with how unpopular it was until I remembered that actually I don't really ever find myself buying this item either. In theory, it's pretty good because it makes you immune to bullets, and especially with how powerful gun builds are right now, immunity to bullets sounds absolutely great. It's a 24-second cooldown with a 4-second duration, so you get a nice window of opportunity to become immune to a haze ult, for example. And it also gives you 15% passive bullet resistance on top of that, so that's not bad. However, I think why this item fails is because it comes with an active movement speed penalty, minus 1.5 meters per second and minus 20% dash distance, and so you're really penalized for using this in a way that you aren't necessarily penalized for buying other things. For example, you could get Return Fire, which is a significantly cheaper item, and it doesn't come with a downside. It gives you 10% bullet resist, which is almost as much as Metal Skin, and instead of making you immune to bullets, it just makes you return bullet damage, and so the gun builds are much less incentivized to shoot you while this item is active. And it also has slightly better uptime. It has a 25-second cooldown with a 6-second duration, while Metal Skin has a 24-second cooldown with a 4-second duration. So you get a bigger window of opportunity to use this item, you get almost the same amount of bullet resistance, and it actually helps your damage output if they do decide to shoot you, and when combined with your own damage output, you might even be likely to kill the gun build that's assaulting you. And it also returns bullet damage before damage reduction is calculated in, so you can also pair this with bullet resilience if you want, and then all of a sudden the enemies are taking more damage than you. So, this is just a way better version of Metal Skin, to be totally honest. And so I think one obvious thing that you could do for Metal Skin is you could just simply remove the movement speed penalty. You're still completely vulnerable to spirit damage during this time. Immunity to bullets is powerful, but I mean, there's a very clear reason why nobody's buying this item, and why it has such a poor win rate. It just isn't nearly as good as the other options, even though immunity to bullets is a very powerful thing. So I think just removing the downside on this would go a long way towards making it very, very powerful. But maybe that's too bold? I don't know. Let me know in the comments section. Next, let's talk about Blood Tribute. This is an item that, anecdotally, I have never seen anyone buy. I've never seen anyone use this, and I was forced to use it yesterday because of a hero request stream that I did. Somebody had it in their build and made me try it, and yeah, it's a bit rough. It's a bit rough around the edges, and it is currently the second least popular item in the game. The win rate's not terrible. It has a 51.7% win rate, but its unpopularity, I think, speaks to how bad it is as an item. If nobody's buying the item, then there must be a very good reason for that. And I think the big reason for it, kind of similar to Metal Skin, is just the major downside that Blood Tribute has. It gives you 8% spirit resist, and it has a toggleable ability, which is so interesting. It's the only item of its type in the game. And when you toggle it on, you get 40% fire rate, 50% debuff resist, and 1.75 meters per second of movement speed. That's incredible. But it comes with the steep, major downside of minus 50% healing reduction and 40 health per second of health drain. And that healing reduction is just brutal. If the enemies are attacking you, then you are not able to heal yourself nearly as effectively, and you're also taking self-damage on top of that. And if they are sensible, reasonable enemies, and they buy something like Healbane, Toxic Bullets, Spirit Burn, etc., your healing is pretty much just done. Completely sapped, unless you turn off the Blood Tribute. But if you turn off the Blood Tribute, you're not getting value out of Blood Tribute at all. There are much better ways to get more than 8% Spirit Resist. I mean, come on, that's not very good. So, my thought is, instead of giving this a ridiculously crazy amount of healing reduction, what if we make it deal a percentage of your max health as damage to you while the item is active? So, no more healing reduction, but make it a rather steep amount of self-damage that you have to heal back up. But you're not actively incurring that healing reduction penalty that stacks with the enemy's healing reduction. So you would potentially be able to out-heal this item with something like Vampiric Burst, but if the enemies put anti-heal on you, then you're still going to end up taking a lot of damage from your own self-damage. So that would be the idea I would have, and also, maybe it would end up being too strong at that point, but if that is the case, you could always just mitigate the effects that it gives, make them slightly lower, maybe remove the move speed or something like that, I don't know. But as it stands, I feel like with this healing reduction, unless they buff this item to the moon, give it like 80% fire rate and 70% debuff resist or something ludicrous like that, people just aren't going to use it because it's just not fun to play with when you're constantly reducing your own healing. After that, we have Express Shot. Now, this is kind of a tragic tale of an item. On release, it was really good on a select few characters. It was really good on characters with a powerful ult fire like Shiv, Viscus, and Yamato, and it was also really good on Paradox because it affected her carbine in a very powerful way. However, they have since nerfed it to be pretty much dead on all of those characters, because it does drastically reduce secondary fire weapon damage compared to the normal weapon damage amp. So, yeah, basically what this does is it causes your next attack to fire twice in quick succession with increased damage and velocity. The attack consumes extra ammo, and yeah, so if I just buy this on Viscus here, you can see if I just alt fire, bam bam, it fires 2 shots like that, and effectively we deal a big burst of damage in a short amount of time. And if we also just fire regularly like this, you see that we also get that extra attack. Although it does consume a lot of ammo. Like, that was a regular primary fire, and it consumed so much of my clip there. What the heck? Compared to one regular individual bullet, that's kind of insane. Holy crap. So, what can we do to fix Express Shot? That is the question. Well, first of all, one thing that I've noticed with Express Shot is that if you're constantly firing, it is actually not decrementing its cooldown. It's actually refreshing the cooldown but having no effect. So if you look on the bottom left of the screen as I constantly fire my gun, you see that as long as I'm shooting my gun, I'm not giving Express Shot time to recover. And even if I reload there, and then start firing immediately after my reload is done, I don't have enough time for Express Shot to fully come back online. So there's a very big timing issue with this item. What I would do is make it so that continuously firing does not interrupt the cooldown of Express Shot. So, if I were constantly firing my gun like this, every 3 seconds I would just fire out an extra bullet that does a lot more damage, but consumes more ammo. So that way you'd be able to get much more consistent value out of this, rather than having to play really weirdly with your gun and timing your shots and not having to shoot for some period of time and, you know, waiting an extra, like, half second after reloading to give Express Shot time to come back online. Like, there's too much jank with the item currently, and I think that consistency issue is the biggest problem with it. You could also theoretically make it consume less ammo, because for Express Shot there, like, if I just fire once, instead of consuming 2 ammo, I consume 6 on Viscus, which is, like, a quarter of my mag just gone. So you could also make the extra ammo consumed less of a penalty. That could potentially be a thing as well. It seems like it does, at least for Viscus here, it fires, yeah, 5 extra ammo, which works out fine for his alt fire, because it feels like you're firing, you know, 2 alt fires properly. But then for his primary fire, like his regular M1, it just feels weird. So that could be another way you address this item. After that, we have Cheat Death. Now, this is a very unpopular item, however, the win rate is actually quite high at 55.9%, which surprises me because, yeah, I literally almost never see this item purchased either. It's down there with Blood Tribute as an item that I just never see. And I think the big reason why you don't see too many people buy Cheat Death is because it's really expensive. It's a tier 4 item. However, there are a lot of tier 4 items that just work to mitigate your death rather than saving you after you die. And generally, that's a better strategy for winning in Deadlock. Because when you're in this dead passive, whatever you want to call it, you have minus 70% damage reduction, minus 70% healing reduction, and minus 2 meters per second of move speed. Now that does give you a very generous window to be saved by your team. For instance, with Viscus's Cube and a Rescue Beam, you can get pulled out of a dangerous situation, live to tell the tale. Or you can take matters into your own hands and get your Ethereal Shift back online, and at that point you're spending 12,000 on survival items like that. I'm not sure that's a good idea. You get the idea, right? But I think the big issue it runs into is just that, yeah, it's competing with all these other tier 4 items that just help you stay alive in the fight at full effectiveness. It gives you 200 bonus health and 15% bullet resist, that's pretty solid, but you could buy Colossus and gain 30% bullet resist, 30% spirit resist temporarily, 600 bonus health, and 15% weapon damage. Or you could buy Diviner's Kevlar, which is better for the one instance I've ever seen Cheat Death be used effectively, which was on Dynamo. He would ult in, and even if he got killed during his ultimate, he would cheat death and would still be able to pull in people. But you could just buy Diviner's Kevlar. That would also increase the ability's duration, its power. You would get 1,000 hit points, which also stack with your damage reduction. And I feel like that's just better, too. So, Cheat Death is kind of a weird item. I believe they also had another item that would kind of like respawn you a short distance away after dying significantly faster, way back when I first started playing Deadlock, and it got removed from the game because it was so weird. And I feel like Cheat Death is kind of a similar type of item, where it would certainly be interesting to have an item that allows you to cheat death, but I'm just not entirely sure that it works overall for this game. Now, I mean, you could just pull the plug, delete the item, and honestly, people probably wouldn't miss the item, considering how unpopular it is. But if we were trying to fix the item, then, I don't know, perhaps what you could do is you could severely mitigate the penalties of the item, but also maybe shorten the death immunity duration to like 3 seconds or something like that. So, you get to stay alive even after dying, and you get an opportunity to finish off the enemies, but you're still pretty low. Like, maybe instead of having 70% damage reduction, you would only have 20% damage reduction. You would still keep the healing reduction, but it would give you an opportunity to maybe kill the enemy that you're attacking. Maybe that would be too toxic, though. I don't know. I feel like this is one of the items that's really unpopular, and I don't have any good ideas for how to fix it. So, I will leave that to you in the comments section. I'm sorry, this one's just, it's got me stumped. Next, I want to talk about Split Shot. This is probably the most popular item I'm going to be talking about today. Still overwhelmingly unpopular with just a 1.3% buy rate, but it is, yeah, the most popular item here nonetheless, and its win rate also isn't terrible at 50%. I think this item is just really difficult to justify on most heroes, and I also feel like in some ways it acts like a crutch, because if your aim is good, you'll be able to hit enemies without needing the split shot. If your aim is bad, then split shot helps, but it really doesn't fix the underlying problem that your aim still sucks. And there are some interesting synergies with this item. For example, you could theoretically buy it on Great Talon, and it works multiplicatively with his weapon shot. So instead of going from 5 to 10 multi-shot, it goes from 5 to 25 multi-shot. It's very funny, but the effectiveness, well, I mean, it's a Great Talon gun build, and do I even need to say anything about that? Like, it's just not good. It's not good. There was also a very short-lived bug with Viper where Split Shot would build up her lethal venom significantly faster, and it also has natural synergy with Viper anyways, because while she's sliding around, she's kind of difficult to aim with, and she has all of that weapon spread, and so Split Shot just drastically improves your chances of actually hitting the enemies, which is good, you know, that's pretty nice, but they've since patched that bug, and so I feel like it's also harder to justify on her, and outside of that, there are very few instances where you'd want to buy this, and most of the time I've seen it purchased, it's been on a meme build, like Express Shot Split Shot Yamato with her alt fire, or something really stupid like that, Flat Cannon Viscus, right? So, I think the problem with Split Shot is that hitting more than one hero to get the weapon damage amp is actually super difficult, because Split Shot fires extra bullets on a two-dimensional plane. It just shoots it in a straight line, just like this. But Deadlock is a three-dimensional game, and so let's say we have Infernus up here, right? He's on the ground, and then we have a Lash up there. I'm never going to hit both of those guys with Split Shot. Split Shot gets 0 value there. So, perhaps Split Shot could theoretically also work vertically. Maybe you could have like an alt fire for it where it makes your split shot go up and down instead of just horizontally. Or maybe you could change the shape of split shot entirely to be something like a cone or something like that. I don't know, but the very big issue is just that it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to actually get any reasonable amount of weapon damage stacking from this item. And the buff only lasts for 5 seconds, the stacks do last for 12 seconds, which is longer, but still, at the end of the day, it's just really, really difficult to get that weapon damage online. The other thing you could do, if you didn't want to play with the shape, is you could just make it so that you need fewer stacks, or you just get it all at once. If you hit 2 people with your multi-shot just one time, you get 40% extra weapon damage for 12 seconds, or something like that. Because, yeah, like, getting max stacks with this, I don't think I've ever seen anyone achieve that, to be totally honest. I think you need a perfect storm of, like, a dynamo ult or something, and even then you'd run into issues where the enemies would be body blocking each other for some of your shots. And so it's so difficult to make use out of that component of split shot. And I think making that more consistent would make the item more savory, because it's already a limited window of opportunity. It is a 14-second cooldown with a 5-second buff duration. The uptime actually isn't too bad at all. But, yeah, the weapon damage per sec is just so difficult to get value out of with this item. Finally, let's talk about the least popular item in all of Deadlock. This item has been purchased the fewest amount of times out of any item in the game, and that is Shadow Weave? Huh. Interesting. This item is even less popular than Blood Tribute, which absolutely surprised me when I first saw it. I mean, I knew it exactly wasn't that popular, but Blood Tribute? Really? That's more popular? What are we doing here? Okay. This item does actually have a pretty good win rate at a staggering 55.8% win rate, but it has very, very, very few matches played. It's kind of an interesting item. The stats it gives you are 10 out of combat regen and 2 meters per second of sprint speed, and then it has an active ability where every 40 seconds you are able to become stealthed for 25 seconds. That's actually quite big. And whenever you take damage, obviously you get briefly revealed in stealth, just like Haze. And attacking or using an ability will end your stealth and start an ambush, temporarily granting you bonus fire rate and spirit power. This ambush lasts for 8 seconds, and you get 35% fire rate and 35 spirit power. This is kind of a difficult item to balance, because theoretically invisibility is a superpower, and on some characters it can be very evil. I've actually, I made a video where I bought Shadow Weave on Mo and Krill, and I ulted people while invisible, which, yeah, that was, that was certainly an experience. But at the same time, obviously this item is very unpopular, and I think the reason why is that the actual stats that you get for the ambush portion aren't that exciting compared to some of the other items you could get. If you're playing a true gun build, then you have other far better weapon items that you could get. 35% fire rate is fantastic, but it's also the same amount of fire rate as burst fire. It's way cheaper and way more consistent. And if you're going for a tier 4, then you could get Glass Cannon, which is a crazy amount of weapon damage and a stacking fire rate boost that ultimately ends up being higher than Shadow Weave if you can maintain it. You could get Lucky Shot, which gives you just a lot of extra weapon damage, or you could get something like Armor Piercing Rounds and cut through their armor, or Crippling Headshot. There are items that give you way more just raw damage than Shadow Weave if you're playing a true gun build. If you're playing a true spirit build as well, 35 spirit power is pretty fantastic, but there are also other items that give you way more spirit power. You could buy Boundless Spirit, and you could get that 35 spirit power permanently, plus 15% on top of that, which is kind of a big deal. Or you could go for any of these other spirit items that help you out way more than just giving you raw spirit power. If you're playing a burst build, for example, you might want Mystic Reverb, which slaps a whopping 50% extra damage on top of whatever ability you have. So, I feel like those stats kind of make it hard to justify even though the invisibility is so powerful. To really get a grasp for how poor these ambush stats are, let's compare it to Spiritual Overflow, which is an item that You know, it's pretty solid, but it's not exactly the most popular gun item either for a lot of characters. It provides just 5% less fire rate, 5 less spirit power, but it also gives you 15% spirit lifesteal and 20% ability duration. Hello, that's ludicrous. And you just get that by shooting enemy heroes. It's a 15-second duration. It's so consistent compared to Shadow Weave, where you get 8 seconds of ambush duration, but it's on a 40-second cooldown. So, yeah. When you're looking kind of bad on your stats compared to Spiritual Overflow as a tier 4 gun item, that's a little difficult. So, perhaps what I would do then is I would buff the ambush stats to be much more powerful, considering that their uptime is much poorer than some of the other items. Really play into that idea of being some kind of stealth assassin. So, you could just buff the fire rate and buff the spirit power if you wanted to, or you could also give it another effect, kind of like Spiritual Overflow has. You know, maybe when you activate an ambush, you also get more weapon damage, and then you get a larger amount of spirit power, like 50 additional spirit power, or something like that. Just something to really make it feel like you are ambushing somebody. And if that ends up being too powerful, you could always lower the ambush duration to really make it a rushy, bursty playstyle, but if you don't kill them in time, then all of a sudden you lose those effects, and it's a high-risk, high-reward playstyle. Or maybe you don't need to do any of that, and maybe it's just meant to be a niche item. It does still have a pretty good win rate right now, very good win rate actually, so maybe you don't need to buff it, and maybe it's just one of those situational items that's meant to just be there for the people who want the playstyle, but it's really not for everybody. Well, yeah, that's gonna do it for this video, so let me know what you think about all of these items in the comment section down below. I would love to hear your thoughts on how you would change them, buff them, rework them, or if I'm crazy and they don't need any changes, or maybe my changes that I suggested are just really stupid. I mean, I have no idea, and that's for you to decide. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like down below and subscribe for more videos from me, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.